So hello everyone and welcome to a joint session by Twitter and EyeSee. Today's topic is gender in sports ads, how non-traditional roles affect brand equity. My name is Sanja Topic. I'm EyeSee's content manager, and I'm so excited to be hosting this conversation today and to be joined by two amazing researchers. I would like to present to you Michelle Grushko from Twitter and Mila Milosavljevic from EyeSee. Hello and welcome.
Hi.
Hello.
Could you please briefly introduce yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Grushko. I have been on Twitter's Marketing Insights and Analytics team for about 3 years now, and I serve as the data scientist. So a lot of the projects that I've worked on include best practices for advertisers and how to achieve their KPIs.
Thank you. And Mila?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mila. I'm Senior Insights Manager at EyeSee, working in UX and digital department. I'm in market research for 7 years now and 2 years in EyeSee. And I would like to say that we in EyeSee are really excited to be here today with Twitter, given the great cooperation that we had over the past 4 years. And actually working with Twitter has presented us with the opportunity to push our tools and methodologies to the next level and led us to think outside of the box on many occasions in both terms of recommendations and solutions. So I feel like we grow together, through the insights and through the challenges that were presented to us.
Thanks very much, Mila. And just before we start, I'd like to quickly say thanks to Quirks for setting up such an amazing event, virtual event, and providing us with an opportunity to share really meaningful and interactive conversations in these times. Our session today will run for about 25 to 30 minutes. And after that, we will answer some questions that may come up during the presentation. So if they do, just feel free to type them in the chat box on the right-hand side. And if you want to connect with Mila or Michelle after the session, reach out to them over their speaker profiles, and I'm sure they will be really happy to connect with you. Okay, so moving to the presentation now. So the topic of our session today may seem a bit out of place when we think about the fact that the entire sports world is on the sidelines these days due to the pandemic, and also due to the fact that the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games are postponed for next year. However, we believe that when societies face seismic crisis and big shifts happen, it is crucial not to lose sight of other issues that might take a backseat to current issues. So that's why today we're examining a social topic that is currently somewhat neglected, I would say. So women's participation in sports competitions has been on a steady rise throughout history, albeit lined with many hurdles to overcome. Inspired by the historic high in female participation at the Tokyo Olympic Games, where 48.8% of participants would be women, Twitter decided to take a deep dive into the way advertising portrayal of gender roles in sports influences brand perception and their consumers. So, Michelle, could you tell us more about where you came from with this study and how important are sports for Twitter in general? Where does gender equality fit into that picture?
So sports have always been big on Twitter. The quote on this slide really says a lot. People come to Twitter to follow sports events, to get a lot of information and a lot of different perspectives, and also get all of this information in real time. According to our cultural insights from the conversation on Twitter, conversations around defining gender roles is a fast evolving trend where people are exploring the meaning of masculinity, femininity, and traditional gender roles. We also see that people are increasingly discussing issues of diversity as it applies to work, sports, and entertainment.
So, yeah, well, Twitter is kind of a beacon of the latest of what is happening and always feeling the pulse of the community and transmitting voices that need to be heard. Do you think brands are becoming more aware of their potential to facilitate real conversations and societal change on social media?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we always say that Twitter is the best place to connect with what's happening. And our research has found that cultural relevance is incredibly important to a consumer's purchase decision, and it actually correlates with performance on brand metrics, as you see in this slide. We also found that it's important to consumers that brands are involved in culture, so this includes events and trends, and also social issues. And in addition, consumers are increasingly talking about gender recognition in campaigns, with a 93% increase in volume over the last few years.
Well, that's a huge, huge number. And since you do a lot of research on advertising on your platform and constantly share very valuable best practices and advice for brands, where does a piece of research like this come into play, and how does it affect advertisers?
Yeah, so we're definitely very research heavy, and a lot of my work specifically on the marketing insights and analytics team focuses on best practices. So we typically tend to work on these by understanding exactly what a brand's KPIs are on the platform, and then we typically work together to achieve the best results possible. But in addition to advertisers, we also work with agencies and creative agencies. And to answer your question, looking at the slide here, we see that because a brand's cultural involvement accounts for a quarter of a consumer's purchase decision, it's really important for a brand to be involved culturally. For this research specifically, I believe it will help brands connect with what's happening around the growing conversation of gender equality and gender roles, especially in sports.
And speaking of this specific research, why is it important for Twitter to use both implicit and explicit measurement to try and obtain insights?
So there's definitely benefits to both implicit and explicit measurement. So explicit measurements such as brand effect surveys really help us get at stated preferences, but we also want to use research methods that get at a person's implicit thoughts, because we know from academic literature, especially in psychology, that there might be biases that we want to avoid. So I would say that we have a pretty close working relationship with EyeSee, where we can combine both implicit and explicit measurement into a comprehensive research study such as this one.
And why, for years now, you've been relying on contextual research for uncovering insights that help brands make the most of communication on Twitter. Can you tell us more about why testing in a realistic context matters to you?
Yeah, absolutely. The architecture of Twitter is built for discovery, and people come to Twitter in a discovery mindset, which makes them more likely to discover and remember brands. Thus, testing in a timeline simulation allows for us to recreate a user's natural experience in the platform. This also allows us to continually prove the differences of the user mindset on our platform versus others.
Thanks, Michelle. That was very insightful. Now moving on to the study itself. Mila, can you tell us a bit about the study design? What did it look like, and why did you use those specific methods you did?
So in order to help Twitter understand more deeply the role of gender in sports ads and impact it may have on brands and their consumers, we offered our unique approach that taps into both conscious and unconscious of the viewers. 1,800 respondents were exposed to Twitter timelines on their desktop computers with embedded advertisements, and they were instructed to browse the feed as they usually would. While browsing, their eye movements and facial expressions were tracked, providing insights about ad visibility and emotional engagement. And we were able to identify how noticeable, if at all, different ads were and to what extent. Furthermore, this approach gave us a clear picture of emotions that were evoked during ads exploration. Afterwards, viewers were exposed to the online retailer's website, the unspecified one, with products that were advertised in the ads. And the purpose of this shopping exercise was to show us whether the advertised brand will be bought in a competitive environment, as well as which ad solution stimulated the purchase the most. After the behavioral part, respondents were directed to a survey platform where they completed the reaction time measurement task that measures implicit reactions and certainty of respondents' answers. And they were also able to further evaluate the effectiveness of the advertisements that they've seen.
And now I have the same question for you as I did for Michelle. Why use a combination of explicit and implicit methods and not just one or the other?
Yes, well, when researchers utilize a combination of implicit and explicit methods, so eye tracking, facial coding, virtual shopping, RTM, and survey, it yields additional value when exploring attitudes about deeply rooted societal stereotypes. Using only behavioral or only conventional research methods would have failed to pinpoint those subtle differences in consumer opinions that have substantial effect on brand KPIs. And the benefits of using this twofold approach are multiple. First, by testing the ads in the right context, which is simulated scrollable Twitter timeline, as Michelle showed us, we ensure unforced exposure and thus an objective look into the performance of the ad. Secondly, we test how the ads affect shopping in a virtual shopping environment, ensuring a lifelike experience for the respondents instead of relying just on the stated purchase intent. And thirdly, we dove into the conscious consumer attitudes by utilizing RTM, because RTM provides us with another layer of insight by exposing this discrepancy between what is stated and the implicit attitude. For example, in this study, ads showing male athletes in traditional male roles performed rather well on attention, visibility, they evoked positive emotions. But this added analysis on the RTM actually showed us that although these commercials are eye-catching and pleasing, they were not entirely relatable to neither male or female audience.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I hope we can hear more about it right now. So let's take a deep dive into the results. Mila, could you go over the 4 categories of ads you tested and tell us how they fared on behavioral and explicit KPIs that you measured?
So let me just mention which 4 categories we're going to talk about. We had female athletes shown in traditional roles, meaning ads that highlighted their grace and posture, elegance, or engagement in childcare, and non-traditional roles, emphasizing women's stamina and engagement in sports that are traditionally considered to be masculine. And we had same situation for male athletes. We tested ads with the sportsmen in traditional and non-traditional roles. Now, when it comes to overall performance of these 4 categories, all ads had absolute visibility, undoubtedly due to its positioning being in the place at the top of the timeline, but not just because of that. The content also had some role in it. And the fact that content is important was actually confirmed through tracking of viewers' facial expressions. Tested ads turn out to be notably more engaging than what we used to see in some other studies. And this shouldn't be surprising, as the majority of these creatives featured celebrities, like famous athletes, and many of them had distinct elements of humor or passion for sport. And some of them were also really emotionally charged, like showing athletes in situations of extreme exertion or endurance. Furthermore, exposure to all these ads undoubtedly pushed purchase behavior in positive direction. There was an increase in number of shoppers, in number of bought items, and consequently in the amount of money that was spent when comparing to control cells that weren't exposed to test creatives. Now, there are some significant differences in performance between these 4 categories that we mentioned, and these differences are seen in both implicit and explicit KPIs. Tweets with female athletes as main protagonists outperform campaigns portraying male athletes on many KPIs, on likability, on visual appeal, uniqueness, credibility, clarity of communication. Furthermore, they have stronger potential to improve image of advertised brand, drive interest about it, and positively differentiate it from competitors. Tweets with female athletes labeled as non-traditional managed to elicit higher emotional response compared to the traditional ones, particularly when it comes to positive reactions. And they also had slightly greater impact on shopping behavior, increasing the number of buyers. Ads with male athletes had rather inconsistent execution, performing well on some KPIs but fall short on others. Having sportsmen in traditional roles kept viewers' attention with action-packed plots, with vivid colors, loud music, putting product in focus. And this is why these campaigns were followed by high brand recall, high emotional response. However, with lowest score on favorability and likability, those commercials are also seen as notably less credible, less comprehensive, less original, and less capable to drive interest about the brand. Male athletes in non-traditional roles triggered lower emotional engagement and didn't particularly stand out in terms of driving interest about the brand or improving viewers' opinion about it. Still, they had stronger effect on shopping behavior than ads with sportsmen in traditional roles.
Thanks, Mila. And what are some of the key findings when it comes to male and female athletes in advertising campaigns in general?
One very interesting finding is that ads featuring females in sports activities contradict stereotypes by default. Female athletes are seen as strong, skillful, persistent, even when the emphasis is on their gracefulness and elegance. Sports are obviously still perceived as a field ground dominated and ruled by men, so regardless of the way they are portrayed, women in sports defy stereotypes. And these ads are also seen as more empowering and more memorable compared to those with male athletes as main protagonists. Now, regardless of protagonist's gender, ads with non-traditional roles make greater impact on shopping behavior compared to control group. And we also noticed that ads with male athletes had higher effect on shopping behavior of female viewers, while ads with sportswomen had greater impact on shopping of male audience compared to control group. And this is in line with some of our internal studies that show that purchase intent goes stronger when viewer and protagonist are of opposite gender. We were also interested in finding out why ads with male athletes presented in both traditional and non-traditional roles fall flat when it comes to credibility and sense of empowerment. And our hypothesis is that roles given to male athletes slide between energized and sometimes goofy men of action, those are the traditional ones, and athletes who bravely embark on atypical activities bordering on extreme. And none of these polarities is seen as plausible or convincing, implying that men in the audience are still looking for more relatable role models to feel empowered. Successful alpha males are just one predominant polarity, and that obviously is no longer enough. So one question remains, where is that balance with whom male viewers can relate?
Mila, what are your recommendations for advertisers who are planning their campaigns for next year's Olympics?
So what we learned through this study is that non-traditional creatives bring the element of surprise and novelty because media is highly saturated with typical gender roles. So everything that stands out from that pattern has potential to keep viewers focused, drive brand awareness, and implicitly affect purchase behavior. However, there are few other points to consider in order to ensure optimal advertising strategy. Even though emphasizing gender equality in ads is relevant, it shouldn't be done for the sake of it alone. Make sure that equality naturally fits the plot, creating context that is believable and in line with advertised product and target group. Be brave to explore the whole continuum of possible non-typical roles for both men and women. And it's important that this digression from norm isn't too extreme to create a barrier among viewers. So try to capture situations that are familiar to both genders, but have that twist with opposite gender in a key role.
Great, thank you. That was very useful. And so, Michelle, what are your plans when it comes to the 2021 Olympics?
I'm personally super excited about the 2021 Olympics. I love watching it and I really can't wait. And I'm really interested to see how research like this is going to play a role in advertising, given the increase of conversation around gender equality in sports. And we see here on the slide that people actually expect on Twitter for ads to be creative and culturally relevant, as found in our 2020 Tokyo Twitter Insight study. So I'm sure that that same pattern will be persistent in the 2021 Olympics as well.
Thanks. I'm also personally looking forward to seeing all the creative ways and portrayals we will see in the upcoming year. And so thank you both, Mila and Michelle. It's been a pleasure talking about this topic with the two of you. But to conclude our conversation today, I'm going to ask you to share your one key takeaway from this session. Michelle, would you go first?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad that we had the opportunity to talk about this research. Personally, my biggest takeaway from this session and this research is that representation matters. So we've seen from Google research in the past, when they analyzed Super Bowl ads from 2015 to 2019, that male characters had more speaking time, were more likely to be leaders, less likely to focus on physical attractiveness and/or appearance. And I think that women in sports is predicted to be one of the top trends in the sports industry for 2020. So I believe it's incredibly important to see women who are breaking traditional stereotypes, both on the field and in advertisements across platforms.
Thank you so much. Mila, what about your key takeaway from this conversation?
Well, as Michelle said, I'm really grateful that we had this opportunity today to talk about gender equality, especially now when, understandably, the global pandemic has become the focus for the media. And I think that the COVID-19 situation will make this topic even more relevant and bring it to the surface, given that according to the latest study conducted by universities of Cambridge and Zurich, women spend almost 2 times more time on childcare while working at home, taking up the role of both professional mother and or wife. So while we are talking about different strategies that advertising has in portraying female and male athletes, we are also talking about the importance of bringing awareness to the topic of gender equality and inclusivity in society.
Thanks again to both of you, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. I hope this presentation was useful, and I hope it will help advertisers uncover and fight the long-lasting stereotypes we see in the world of advertising when it comes to gender in sports. It's an ongoing battle, but hopefully research like this helps us steer it in the right direction, led by behavioral and explicit insights. So feel free to reach out to us. Have a great rest of the event and stay safe.